Jan is out on her own, while Tate regroups after battling the military. Is there any hope left for the city? I'm your narrator, Chad, and this is episode 23, chapter 27 of No Evil. Let's escape. Tate told his army to stop and to wait. They held their ground. It wouldn't be prudent to leave without first doing a bit of exploring. There was sure to be plenty of equipment to help the cause. Sierra carried a duffel bag and Tate filled it with any weapon he found. He found mostly pistols, but there were some machine guns of various types. When the bag was full, he pushed a message to Sierra to join the others. On his way out, he passed an office. Tate almost didn't check it, but then he turned back. He opened the drawers and shuffled through them. Nothing but papers. He reached to a bottom drawer and found it locked. The drawer crumpled under his gaze and pulled free of the desk. He pulled out another handgun and stuck it in the suit pocket. The only thing that remained in the drawer was an envelope marked Hangar 3. Inside was a key. The key piqued Tate's interest, and he located Hangar 3 without much trouble. It was the closest to the northeast side of the building, basically directly outside the office window. The hangar had only one thing in it, an armored 8-wheeled vehicle. Tate's dry, cracked lips curved into a smile. He climbed up the side of the vehicle. It was close to double Tate's height at its tallest point, and got inside. He put the key in the ignition and turned it, and the monster roared. Tate didn't have any idea how to drive the vehicle, and knew it wasn't likely something he could pick up quickly. Instead, he called out to his followers for their experience. The knowledge sifted through the air and filtered into him. Tate's power impressed him. He could do anything he wanted, and he would. Tate hit the accelerator and wheeled the truck out of the hangar. Kahir's mouth dropped open when the vehicle pulled up. Tate popped out of the top. "Lord, you gave me a start, my boy," Kahir said. He wiped his brow exaggeratedly and inspected the vehicle. "Now this machine will serve us well."
Yes, it's time to take the city. All of it.
Tate thought he'd find Munson there. He was probably holed up in a shack. He was probably blubbering and afraid.
We'll get him.
That's right. We'll have the false prophet and the rest of the city too. Armageddon starts here, my boy. We're on the ground floor. I can't believe she left, Sam said. He was looking off down the trail. Case was behind him brushing snow off of the barbecue. I can't believe you let her leave, Case said. Me? What about you? I have my wife and kids to worry about. So that makes this girl my responsibility? A little responsibility might do you some good. Geez, Case, is there something you want to say to me? No. I just think you tend to run away rather than fix things. You let Nicole leave. You let Jan leave. What am I supposed to do? Lock them in the basement? Can we not do the psychiatrist thing right now? It's giving me a bad taste. Besides, maybe we should leave. We can't, Case said. He was clearing snow away from the base of the grill now. Do you really want them this close to this thing? Maybe we should all go. Hey, I could probably get us to Hawaii, no pesky air travel. I can't leave. We have a life here, Sam. We're going to have to rebuild it, but it's here. Case, are you mental? You know this thing isn't just some riot. I know. Fuck. I know. The propane tank had just enough gas left in it to grill the kids up some hot dogs. Sam had a peanut butter sandwich on stale brown bread, and Case just looked nervously out to the lake through lunch. Marina puttered around. Sam could feel her emptiness. She was just going through the motions trying not to upset the kids, but her heart was broken. It ached equally for the loss of her parents, and for the distance at which Case seemed to put himself from her. Sam thought of Hawaii again. If he concentrated just right, he'd feel his body slip through the thin veil of reality and step out on the other side to see a vast ocean and blue sky. He could almost feel the sand between his toes. Nevertheless, he sat in the cabin eating peanut butter. His head told him to leave, but the guilt in his heart forced him to stay. Case wandered over to where Sam was sitting. Marina dressed the kids in one-piece winter suits and said they'd be out on the lake. They left. At least the kids can still be kids, a little anyway, Sam said. Yeah, they're too old now. They know something's going on. I think maybe they're doing it for her and not the other way around. Could be. Are you serious about what you said? About Hawaii? Absolutely. I can't believe it, but I'm considering it. That's great. Let's get out of here. There's just one thing that's bugging me. Sam, you and that red-haired guy are obviously connected in some way. You have to be. Look at what you can both do. I know. Sam's mind flashed an image of the ever-changing face of the entity. Damn it, Sam. Are you ever gonna be straight with me? What aren't you telling me? Back at your apartment, here the other day, you have this look like you're lost in space. I think I am. What the hell is that supposed to mean? I saw something. It isn't human. I don't know what it is, but I think it's in this room right now, with you, inside me. I saw it. Controlling him. Tate, the red-haired guy? I was right there. I didn't see anything, Case said. Sam lowered the sunglasses to show the glowing balls of red that had replaced his eyes. I can see lots of things you can't, Case. That's why I want to go. But I don't want to leave you here, where you might find you. So, you can see something in this room? Every time I look in the mirror, it's like it's there and it isn't there at the same time. You can't see it, but it's so vivid to me. It's hovering above me like we're attached. I'm afraid it's controlling me. Or will at some point. On any other occasion, Case might assume this man was a paranoid schizophrenic, but having seen what he'd seen in the last few days, the benchmark for that diagnosis was set just a little higher now. I believe you, Case said. He patted a hand on Sam's shoulder. That's why I can't let you run. What? You just said a second ago you were... Sam stood and nervously wiped his face. Sam, if you're connected, well, then maybe there's some way you can stop it. How the hell can I do anything to stop it? He has powers, Case said. Well, so do you. I'm not a fucking superhero, Case. This isn't a dude with a fishbowl on his head doing magic tricks. What is that a reference to? Shut up, Case. Listen, we need to just go. And then what? This guy just decimated a forces base. One of the biggest in the country, too. What's gonna stop him? That's what makes me think what you're asking me to do is so crazy here, Case. How am I gonna do what a bunch of trained soldiers couldn't? Sam, he tried to attack you, remember? He couldn't, and he killed Andre instead. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe you can teleport him to the sun or something. I wish I was brave, Case. I really do. But I'm a coward. I can't face them again. The dead, that thing. I know you're scared. There are a million things I could quote to you that say that being a hero doesn't mean you aren't scared. Shit. Your great-grandfather fought in the Second World War, didn't he? Yeah. He was 18. You don't think he wasn't scared shitless? But he got on with it anyway, because that's what you do. The mortars are falling, Sam. We're the only ones who have a hope of stopping it. There was a rumble on the road. Jan pulled off to the side and let the engine idle. Even through the rumble of the engine, she could feel the vibrations coming up from her seat through the asphalt. Jan trained her eye on the horizon. The highway was clear of vegetation, just farmers' fields on both sides, and stretched straight toward the northeast, as far as she could see. There was a black speck on the horizon. It grew just slightly as she watched. Jan panicked and gunned the sled down into the ditch. The snow had mostly melted away from the road, but the ditch was still deep with powder. The snowmobile dug in and was buried. Jan pushed herself down in the snow as well and prayed she hadn't been seen. The rumble approached and continued to build. The sound became less a garbled mess and more of a collection of different sounds packed together. One thing she heard for sure was a large diesel engine. It roared ahead of the sloshing shamble of marching feet. Jan pushed her back deeper into the snow. If they see the tracks, I'm dead. Jan sat there for what felt like an hour. Her legs, hands, and ass were all numb and frozen. She was still wearing a helmet and apprehensively pushed head first out of the bank. She heard the sound in the distance. Pulling off the helmet, Jan crawled up the ditch and peeked over the side. She could see the dead walking in formation, each step in unison, toward the city. Jan turned her attention back to the snowmobile. It was bogged down deep in the snow and had stalled. She reached for the pull cord and tugged it as hard as she could manage. The engine made a glug glug sound, followed by a sound that reminded her of a broken bell. She tried again and got the same result. Frustrated, Jan began gathering great clumps of snow with her arms and pushing it away from the engine. Having cleared away most of the snow, Jan gripped the pull cord again and pulled with everything she had. A twinge of pain shot down her arm, but the engine failed to even roll over. She cursed her timing, but not her luck. Had she been a few minutes later exiting the lane onto the main road, she might have walked right into them. Jan pressed on. On foot she had plenty more time to think. She wasn't quite sure yet whether that was a good thing. She thought of Andre, and then of Diane. The pain hadn't paralyzed her. She was able to keep moving forward, but it numbed her. Her mind was slow to fire. Her thoughts didn't crackle into her mind as clearly. She reached an intersection and found the road blocked off with sizzling wires. The power lines ran up from the intersecting road and turned onto a highway and continued in the direction of the Super 8. From the look of it, they'd torn down every pole they came across to that point. "Well, this walk just got a lot longer," Jan said, almost expecting someone to answer. For the first time it dawned on her that she was totally alone, and there were dangerous things about. Jan walked, and then walked some more. With the highway lined with fallen power lines, she was forced to stick to the deep snow of the ditches and to travel the gravel shoulder when space allowed. She had left mid-morning, and now it was late afternoon at least. She was more grateful than ever that she'd stopped and had the bacon with Nora and Walter. She hoped she'd be able to help them after all. The pain Jan had felt in her thighs earlier returned and intensified. She never left out leg day in her regular workouts, but it didn't seem to matter a hell of a lot at this point. She could barely walk when the road widened into a paved patch about 500 meters wide. There was a gas station on one side and the Super 8 on the other. Both were trashed. Thankfully there weren't any fires, but it seemed all the glass had been smashed from the windows and every scrap of paper from both buildings was blowing around in the street. Jan hurried to the motel. "Peter?" There was no sign of anyone, not a drop of blood. She grabbed every key she could find and started searching the rooms. Most of the rooms were untouched. A couple of them seemed lived in, but they'd been abandoned. "Peter!" Jan tried another door. This one opened into a double room. There were 2 queen-size beds. Both had been slept in and were unmade. A laptop was still plugged in at the desk. Jan tried it. Dead. A cell phone was smashed on the floor. Judging by the hole in the wall, it had been thrown. She picked it up and realized it wasn't as smashed as she thought. The screen was cracked and the back had come off in a couple pieces, but when she hit the button, the screen lit up. There was no signal, but that didn't matter. Jan scrolled through the messages and found her own name. Jan exhaled. It was Peter's phone. The evidence suggested the signal had cut out, and then he threw the phone. She hoped it meant he was still alive. Jan went through the phone message by message. Peter had said the others left while he was gone. He didn't have any messages indicating where they might be. There was a message from Peter to his wife. It read, "Go to your mother's house. I'll meet you there when I can. Love you." It was dated a day ago. Jan thought it was likely the best clue she was going to get. She scrolled through Peter's contacts, found one marked in-laws, and selected it. There was an address. 166 Wilnbad Street, Oracle, Ontario. Oracle was a hamlet, just one main drag and a side street. She'd driven through it when she moved to the city. It was at least 100 kilometers away, and Jan had no way to get there. She put the phone in her pocket, then started toward the door. Then she stopped and grabbed the laptop. Outside, the sun was going down. Jan determined not to be stuck at this motel when it did. There were a few vehicles left in the parking lot. 2 of the 3 were flipped on the roofs. They didn't have keys anyway. The last vehicle, a truck, did have keys in it. Unfortunately, the truck was buried under an overturned sign. It advertised gas for the bargain price of $1.99 per liter. Of course, the one fucking car that has keys is useless. Jan tried the door, and surprisingly it opened. The roof was caved in about half a meter from the passenger side, and the windshield was smashed. Jan wiped away broken glass, ducked, and got behind the wheel. She tried the engine, and it groaned. She turned the key back to the off position, closed her eyes, and turned it forward again. The relief was so intense she almost cried when the engine fired. The sign had been snapped at the base. Jan thought if she moved the truck away slowly, it would slide off the roof. She shifted the truck into reverse and eased her foot off the brake pedal. The truck didn't budge. She pressed gently on the gas, and the engine revved. The tires didn't move. The sign was too wedged into the roof to slide off, and too heavy for Jan to lift. She shifted the truck into drive and tapped the gas. The sound of scraping metal was music to her ears. The bottom of the sign was caught on a lip of concrete, and as Jan rolled forward, the sign simply slid off the passenger side. It clattered to the ground, shaking loose what shards were left of the fluorescent lights. The sound rang so loudly Jan feared one of the dead or that Tate guy would hear it. Jan pulled out of the parking lot before she remembered the road was blocked with downed power lines. The shoulder wasn't wide enough to run the truck down, and she didn't want a chance getting another vehicle stuck. Jan pulled the park around behind the gas station, but found no other exit. Farmers' fields were all she could see toward the north. The south looked mostly the same. The only difference was a patch of forest. From this distance it seemed to start as a single tree dividing fields, but it bulged in the center like a triangle. Jan drove the truck to the other side of the road and behind the motel. Within seconds she spotted footprints in the snow. There were dozens of them. At first Jan thought it must be the horde, but she'd seen them shuffling toward the city. These had to be made by people Peter was with. Maybe he found them too. Jan saw the truck had four-wheel drive. That was good. The trail ran straight through a field, and Jan couldn't be sure how deep the snow was. It wasn't a good option, but it was her only one aside from continuing on foot. She started to pull off the asphalt surface and onto a strip of land separating it from the field, but then hit the brake and shifted the truck back into park. Her heart was pounding and she couldn't catch her breath. Jan had never experienced a panic attack before. She wasn't sure if this is what it felt like, but she was damn sure it was uncomfortable. Nervous sweat soaked her chest and back. She focused on each breath and inhaled slowly, but it was already too late. She retched in her mouth, then opened the door, and full-out puked. Jan wished she could see her mother. She always knew the right thing to do. Jan always felt she lacked that quality in herself, that confidence in what she did. Now she was more nervous than ever that she was making a horrible mistake. Did she have better odds of finding Peter in the woods where this trail of prints led, or didn't it make a whole lot more sense that he'd found his wife and family? Jan didn't have to ask herself the questions much longer, because off in the distance she saw people. They were running. From the forest, a handful of people came bolting out. They struggled in half-running, half-jumping steps in the deep snow. Behind them were a half-dozen dead. Jan could tell by the way they seemed to limply shuffle along after them. They ran with their heads down, and it bobbled on their necks. Jan jumped into the truck and turned the key. The truck revved. The last of those from the forest were tackled. Jan looked away. She didn't want to see another death in her life. She backed the truck away, but couldn't help but glance back, just to be sure. The ones who'd been running were now on their feet, and their arms around their backs. The dead appeared to be tying their hands. When they finished, they continued on marching toward the motel. Jan wasn't going to be there when they reached it. She shifted the truck into four-wheel drive and backed out slowly. There was a clear view from the field to the back of the motel, but Jan thought if she moved slow enough, they wouldn't notice her. Her plan seemed to work. Jan took it easy on the shoulder of the highway. In some places it wasn't half as wide as the regular lane, and she drove with two wheels halfway in the ditch. After a slow 20 kilometers, the sun was gone, and so were the down lines. They'd looped back down a side road toward the force's base. It would take an hour to get there, but Jan had a straight shot to Oracle. That's all for episode 23, chapter 27 of No Evil. If you're enjoying the podcast, let us know what you think in the comments. Give us a like, a share, a twisted pair. Do all those social media things. Become an escapist by subscribing and clicking the bell. And you know what else you could do? You could have a Happy New Year. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the next escape.